Benjamin Franklin Norris Jr., known as Frank Norris, left a literary legacy much greater than any other writer of his age at the time. Known by many as the pioneer in American literary naturalism, he found inspiration in real life by presenting it with tragedies. His works criticized society by exposing injustice, inequality, and crime. Norris was born to a wealthy family in Chicago on March 5, 1870. His father was a jeweler and his mother a former actress. He attended the best schools and his mother introduced him to the wonders of art. In 1884, they moved to San Francisco where he enrolled in art classes. Their home would be a model for the mansion in his 1903 novel, The Pit. Norris did not show interest in literature until he studied in France in 1887, after his father moved them to London, then Paris, so Norris could study painting. In France, he studied a model of literature based on observation and determined by forces. This work was the product of Émile Zola, a pioneer in French naturalist fiction. By reading Zola and gaining a deeper sense of his own breadth of view, Norris realized his passion. He sought to expose the drama of everyday life through observation. Although he also praised the work of William Dean Howells, an American realist writer, he more clearly brought Zola's naturalist view into his work. Naturalism is defined as being a philosophical viewpoint according to which everything arises from natural properties and cause, where realism is the quality of representing a person, thing, or situation in a way that is true to life. Zola's work shows characters that are derived from their own nature. This will be discussed further in the slides regarding McTeague. Norris came back to the United States and enrolled in the University of Berkeley in San Francisco. It was here that he engaged in courses about evolution, heritage, and ethical behavior. Berkeley disappointed Norris and he decided to leave the institution. He focused on writing a novel inspired by Zola's ideals, which would come to be known as McTeague, A Story of San Francisco. After his parents' divorce in 1894, he, his mother, and his brother Charles moved east, while his father remained in San Francisco, continuing still to provide for his family financially. Norris enrolled in some courses at the University of Harvard, including some that covered French literature and others about English literature. It was here that he studied under Louis Gates, a professor of creative writing. From Gates, Norris learned to treat his construction of novels with care and to state the facts of daily life simply. While attending classes with Gates, Norris began working on McTeague, as well as Vandover and The Brute, arguably his most successful works. In 1895, Norris was sent to South Africa as a correspondent for the San Francisco Chronicle. He also had the intention of travel from Cape Town to Cairo to gather material for his fiction. However, he suffered from a tropical fever contracted in South Africa. This, along with some trouble with the law, forced him to return to the United States. Norris finished McTeague in 1896. In this novel, naturalism is expressed through Darwinism. Through the novel, the reader can appreciate the transformation of McTeague from a gentleman of San Francisco to a beast. From the beginning of the book, McTeague is governed by the animal forces which are inside of him. At first, he controls these forces before his marriage and exposure to decadence. The quote here refers to a better man emerging from within McTeague to quell the beast that was emerging because of his lust toward Trina. However, this also shows that this beast is present just below the surface, laying dormant until again uncaged. We can then see his rise to a state of being something like a gentleman. He is shown a better way of life by Trina, who introduced him to a more refined way of living. Although this life suited him, he and his wife were soon thrust into a state of poverty, which stripped him of these indulgences, leaving him to revert back to his old ways. In the end, he is reverted back to an animalistic state of mind, resorting to killing his own wife. Darwinism is presented in a forward progress, changing McTeague from animal to a man of the world. Then, after a turn of events brought out by greed and monetary problems, he proves that he is not fit for this sort of lifestyle, awakening the brute once more. Frank Norris moved to New York in 1898 after being hired by the New York Tribune. He was sent as correspondent in Cuba during the Spanish-American War, where he suffered from malaria. Aside from this, his work was never even published. He suffered through illness only to be pushed to the side. After that, he came back to San Francisco. This was around the time when Norris was introduced to William Dean Howells, who I mentioned earlier. Although McTeague was receiving a great deal of ridicule for its shortcomings, Howells urged Norris to continue his search for a suitable publisher, or in this case, one who would actually publish the novel. The novel finally appeared in 1899. Norris returned to California to gather more material and to marry Janet Black in 1900. Their love affair became the basis for Blix, which was published just after McTeague and is to be a very revealing novel. Although it is classified as being the lightest, most trivial piece by Norris, it is by no means the worst. Norris's The Octopus, published in 1901, was planned as the first of a trilogy called The Epic of the Wheat, and focuses around the struggling wheat farmers of California against the Southern Pacific Railroad. The main hero, a poet, concludes that economic laws which men cannot alter determine the conditions under which they must live. This was followed by The Pit, which appeared after Norris's death in 1902 and focuses around the Chicago Grain Exchange. Its main hero is a self-made capitalist, along with his wife and an artistic dilettante. The scale of the action is smaller, but the characters are more convincing, because Norris was writing about the economic class in which he grew up. In 1902, not too long after the birth of Norris and Black's only child, they moved to San Francisco as a means to gather material for Wolf, A Story of Europe, the third book of the Epic of the Wheat. They planned a world cruise. However, Norris died on October 25th, 1902, because of appendicitis, leaving the book unfinished.